Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the landmark year of 3D TV. Bit of looking back, bit of looking forward as well. And I guess over the last 12 months and a bit, we had the Ryder Cup, a bit of Formula One testing going on, the Queen's speech, Wimbledon, and of course, the Olympics. And I've got two of the key protagonists in all of that alongside me this morning. Kim Shillinglaw is head of 3D for the BBC, and John Cassy is director of Sky 3D. Thank you both very much for coming in this morning. Kim, is it difficult really to put forward, if you like, the public service view of 3D? Because I guess you're looking to do something ever so slightly different to the sort of material that John might be producing over at Sky.
Don't you always hate it when the first question starts with, is it difficult to? That's never a good beginning. No, I don't think it is. Clearly, we're working in very, very different spaces. That's obvious and evident, I think. From the public service point of view, though, what we're doing is running a 2-year trial looking at many aspects of 3D experimentation, which is obviously very, very different from what Sky are doing.
How far are we into the trial at the moment?
We're about 3/4 of the way through, two-thirds to 3/4 of the way through, yeah. And the ambition there is really to experiment with 3D production, 3D transmission of various sorts, and other aspects of 3D workflows. And that's part of a big tradition that sits at the BBC of experimenting with and being across new technologies. That's part of our remit as a public service broadcaster, and it's really in that tradition that we decided to do a 3D trial.
Do you also feel it's the adoption of 3D as well, or has it not really, at least as far as the BBC's concerned, got to that stage? Because obviously the BBC was one of the leading lights in persuading us all to switch to digital television. Does that or could it extend to 3D as well, or is it kind of a different side to it?
I think what's different is that the BBC's job isn't really to persuade people to adopt new technology. The BBC does have a role in facilitating the adoption of new technology when there is public appetite and demand for that. I think it's undeniable that we're at a very, very early stage in the public's relationship with 3D, and I think that's got a long, long way to go at the moment. So our job isn't really to proselytise for technology, but it can be to facilitate access to technology and help the industry with aspects, things like standards, for instance, once there's an appetite for technology to be adopted. Okay,
we'll explore a little bit more of that as we go through. John, you almost have I daren't call it a conveyor belt, but I think I'm about to. But you have a nice flow of 3D material, particularly the sports coverage you're doing almost, well, it is every week, I think. Do you feel at times elements of it are almost getting into routine, or is still every match challenging as the last?
I think it's got easier, but it's still challenging in some ways, and we still want to make it better and better. But we're now on the sports side. I think we've done in excess of 250 live sports events now. We've done 14 different sports in pushing a dozen countries. So we're kind of pretty well practiced at it. But I think that the guys who do it on a day-to-day basis always want to make it better. And you're right. Sport's a key part of our offering. We do a couple of big live events each week. We've got 2 very big football matches coming up this weekend, and we look to do the big events. Events really. There's
this promotion thing. Is it the big weekend, which seems to almost be every weekend on 3D, typical Sky, pushing it forward to the consumer?
What we try to do is focus our kind of viewing around the weekend, because that's when the live sport happens. It's when our movies, when the premieres happen on Sky Movies, and so we try and simulcast those movies. So we try and kind of guide viewers towards a particular point, because as everybody knows, it is early days of 3D, that there's a limited amount of programming out there, and so we want to focus kind of our viewing around certain points.
Okay. Right, well, we've got the glasses at the ready, and I think we've both got a show reel. John, you're looking back a little bit over last year. a wide variety of content in there. What would you say, talk us through some of it, what were the standout items?
Well, I've got to say, one of the most enjoyable bits about creating that tape was that the very excellent creative that we have who drives all of our promos is a Kiwi. And so when I was asking him to put more and more rugby coverage into that, to see England hammering New Zealand was particularly good. I mean, it was a purely personal, myopic thing. But
I'm just thankful the cricket wasn't in 3D.
No, well, exactly. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much a kind of overview of what we've done in the last year. And I guess the themes are that we've tried to focus on big events. And so if you look at, what we've got there, we had everything from, a couple of very big David Attenborough documentaries, and David speaking this afternoon about what he's doing with us and where he thinks 3D is going and why he's working in this space. We showed some of the big sports that we're doing. We showed the testing that we did with Formula One about sort of a month or so ago, the various different sports, the NBA, and we're trying to kind of push big events as much as anything. There's not a huge amount of programming out there at the moment.
And the big events, is that simply because otherwise you end up going into sort of a double specialism, if you like, because you already have it narrowed down as an audience, because 3D is still, although it's growing, it's still available to a limited number of people. Yep. And then if you were to then do a subset once more, that would result in very low audiences.
I think there's very much a degree of that. In the early stages of all these technologies, you have to produce shows that have a level of cut through, but at the same time you also have to balance breadth. So you can't just do sport and movies. You need to be able to appeal to a broad cross section of the household. And if you think about how 3D is viewed, if it's generally a main living room TV experience, and it's, our core market is families, and therefore you want to really try and push things that families can watch and enjoy together. And so that's what we've tried to kind of focus.
I wonder if we could talk just briefly about the people who are watching at the moment via Sky. As I understand it, it's free if you're on, I think, one of the higher tiers, but you do have to phone up and say, can you switch this on for me, please? Yeah. So presumably you have an idea as to how many there are who can
we do. No, and it's a good number, and it's growing very quickly. I mean, we're very pleased with the health of our subscriber numbers. And
do you give a little indication as to what it is?
No, I'm afraid not. No, I mean, we kind of, I'm trying to think, we put some numbers out about a year or so ago when we said we had about 250,000 subscribers. I mean, it's very significantly larger than that now. But what's particularly exciting for us is over the next few weeks we are changing how we make 3D available to our customers.
I guess this is a problem because we saw some clips from Sky Arts there, and I guess Sky Arts by its nature, you'll know very well from having nurtured that channel previously, somebody who maybe persuaded to get Sky, maybe because of Sky Arts, not particularly into Premiership football, but have to go through that buy-through. So you're taking that away.
So essentially what we'll be doing over the next few months is making 3D more widely available, and we'll do that by making it in line with your HD subscription. So if you take HD from Sky, you will be able to sample 3D.
How much at the moment is £10 extra?
Yes, yeah. So basically, there's about 4.5 million homes who take HD from us. So 4.5 million homes will have access to 3D. How much they have will depend on whether they take sports and movies. So sports subscribers will be able to watch the sports. Movie subscribers will be able to watch the movies. If you don't have those packages, then you'll just see a blue screen at that particular point. But everybody will be able to see the Attenborough type shows, the broader entertainment that Peter Capaldi doing Leonardo. So,
and I guess this is important as people. It seems to be happening in part at least. The TV sets are in the shops, and and people are going and buying TVs, and actually some people just want a nice TV, and they happen upon 3D. And so having had that sort of gives. I guess it adds to the kind of showcase, if you like, that you can offer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, one of the things that's really important to understand about why Sky is doing 3D is that we are a service that customers choose to pay for. They don't have any obligation to take us. They can choose to take us. They can choose to cancel on the basis of a phone call. We obviously have to keep them as happy and satisfied as possible to make sure they continue to pay. And 3D is one of those ways that we do that, by offering them something different, something better than they can get elsewhere.
And demographically, does the type of person who makes that call to get 3D switched on, are they representative of the Sky subscriber base as a whole, or are they skewing slightly different at the moment?
Well, so far they've been, clearly because we've only made it available to our top tier customers, they've been our most valuable customers, as in the ones who spend the most with us. And therefore we wanted to reward those people by giving them 3D. But as we broaden it out, you'll find a broader demographic, but it's generally families, it's quite upmarket as the audience, but we expect it to kind of broaden out and we'll get a kind of more holistic group of people.
Okay, back to the show reel. What would you say was the most challenging production of what we saw there?
Well, I think if you were to ask, certainly our sports guys, I think the Formula One tests were a big challenge for a variety of reasons, camera positions, weather,
which circuits did you do the Formula One at?
So we just did it at Catalonia, so in Barcelona, and it was done about a month or so ago, and it was a great thing that, you know, we worked with Formula One management, who are a very good partner of ours, and they enabled us to do this one-off test.
They're quite strict, aren't they, though, on the rules with regard to to broadcasting?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Formula One is a phenomenal sports franchise, and they've managed to achieve that great success by being very clear about what it is they want to do. So yeah, but we work with them very happily and very well, and they're a great partner to work with.
So going forward, but particularly on the Formula One, would you then look to do, I don't know, if you like, the big races of the year? I guess Formula One would argue they're all big races, but the Monacos, the British Grand Prix,
this was just a one-off experiment. We don't have any further plans. All the big races are done by Formula One management themselves, so if anything further happens, it'll very much be
it's quite appealing, because from a pay TV perspective, I think the majority, at least certainly in Europe, the majority of broadcasters for the Formula One are now pay TV companies. So to be able to add that to their own 3D proposition is quite appealing.
Yeah, well, I think that's very much for Formula One to decide what they'd like to do.
Okay. What else? Tell me a little bit more about the art stuff. I think we saw a sort of glimpse of some ballet in there as well.
Yeah, we've kind of played around with various different things. We did the Peter Capaldi clip was from a show called Inside the Mind of Leonardo, and that ran just very recently. That ran on Sky Arts. We've done things like, we've done some live opera, we've done some ballet, we did Matthew Bourne's Swan Lake, and we've just tried to kind of play around with different genres, ensure that we're trying to reach new audiences to see where things appeal, really, because it is early. In terms of early days of the technology, we're experimenting to a certain degree, and we want to just see where the sweet spots are.
Okay. Kim, let's come to you. You're going to be looking forward with a new production. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to see.
Okay, so obviously this year we've done a number of different things, but I thought it'd be interesting to show you an advanced clip of something that actually won't be finished until the very end of this year, actually. So this really is an early taster. It's a natural history show which has got the working title of Hidden Planet Little Heroes. And I think it's a really, really interesting piece. We do actually have the exec producer of the show in the audience here. So any really tricky questions, I may ask you, Mike, to help me out. What I thought was really interesting about this show is it's spun off a 2D commission for BBC One, which was our starting point. But as we started talking about it creatively in 2D, it became more and more evident that it would be a really, really exciting one to try in 3D. And one of the things that, there are two things I think that are exciting about it for me personally. One is that it's about small animals, and I think there's something very interesting about 3D when you can not only add a dimension, but also take you into a very different world by changing size or closeness and distance, things like that. I think one of the shows that I've most enjoyed in 3D in the last year was actually Sky's, the lovely show that they did with Q and David Attenborough. I thought that was really, we saw some clips of it there. And I think in some ways that's also trying to not just add a third dimension, but also move the camera to places that it wouldn't normally be. And that's really, really exciting technically. I think the other creative, the other interesting creatively about the show that I'm going to show you a little advanced clip of is that What again the program makers and the creators working on it are trying to do are experiment with 3D, and they've really done some interesting things there that we might talk about a bit more in a moment, but also really push the storytelling. It's got it's a factual piece, but it's got an almost fable-like or fairy tale-like quality to it. And I think that symbiosis, that feedback loop between trying to do something interesting technically, but also trying to innovate in storytelling terms, that's again where you begin to get a very rich brew that's about seeing 3D not just as something where we ship in big cameras, but as something that we're really trying to unleash a whole different sort of creative energy around.
Okay.
So maybe we'll run the tape.
No, let's take a look. Well, not only was there some brilliant film work, that's the most fantastic musical score I've ever heard on a nature documentary. That was fantastic.
I'm going to take credit for all of it.
I would. It's worth doing. I was interested, lots of things really, but you mentioned the commissioning process for this, insofar as you're starting out, this is on a longer run, and then this is the 3D, there's like a special 3D episode, is that how it's going to work?
Yes, it's the really interesting model, and we've sort of grown in this respect in several ways, because there's things that we started off doing at the beginning of the trial that were literally 3D facsimiles of 2D shows that we're doing. So, for instance, the Strictly Come Dancing final. Obviously, what becomes more creatively interesting is when you can work with a group of people who are making a 2D show, and out of that draw inspiration, and there's obviously a resource element to this, for a 3D show that nonetheless is very much a standalone product and has, you know, layers of shooting that are utterly bespoke, that have storylines that are distinct and standalone from the 2D product.
And I guess particularly with something like this, it has to work as a one-off on its own, because you might not have seen the rest of the series, but you would want to see this particular episode because it's in the 3D format. Absolutely,
and I think what's really exciting to me is, particularly at the BBC, is to see that creative confidence growing, whereby you can move between, as I say, sort of the 3D, 2D facsimile to something that is inspired by and draws on a 2D show, but is, as I say, a much more confident, standalone piece of creative work.
But even so, from what you're saying, you're still not, by the sounds of things, going out and actually going for pure 3D commissions. It's very much, there's this phrase which I haven't heard much recently, it used to be called 360-degree commissioning, but trying to get everything within the one project, at least, of a project that is already underway for a series on BBC One, BBC Two, wherever.
I think that's absolutely right. There are sort of two aspects to that. One is obviously financial. We're running a trial, and that has financial limits to it. We don't have unlimited resources, attractive though that might be. And I think the second thing is that you want to work with people who are already doing great things. You know, they're not people who are sitting around waiting for commissions. They are people who are already doing great things, whether that's in 2D or 3D. Certainly.
This particular project, at what point did the 3D spark come through? Was it a member of the team who came forward and said, "Oh well, we'd like to do this little bit in 3D. We think it would work because"?
No, it was more organic than that. It was actually very, very, very early on. I think actually even before we had fully committed to the 2D project, and we were brainstorming down in Bristol a number of things. Myself, Mike Gunton, who's over there, some people from Worldwide, and we were looking at a couple of things, including one about bears that just didn't feel right, actually. And as we started just getting excited about the editorial, we were sort of having a very fluid conversation about what you could do in 2D and what you could do in 3D.
John's done a lot of sport, of course. You had the Olympics, although I guess the way that if you like, the Olympics' own production company, if you like, kind of changed a little bit of the dynamic of the way the BBC might have been involved with that. But would you look to do sport yourselves at some point? I think a little bit of live sport on the BBC, isn't there?
We've done obviously the Olympics, where we were taking the OBS feed. It was a very sort of involved relationship. And also Wimbledon. In fact, Wimbledon was the very first thing that we ever did in 3D in partnership with Sony and the All England Lawn Tennis Association. I always get that wrong. But I think, you know, again, we're doing a trial. We have to be very, very careful about what we do. We're doing handfuls of pieces rather than the sort of volume that John is doing very well at Sky. I think having done, you know, having had the Olympics experience and having had the Wimbledon experience, that's probably enough for us.
I was going to say, so this is quite interesting. You've done, I think, is it the last 2 years of Wimbledon, or was it just one?
Yeah, we did two. Yeah.
Would you do a third, or would you say, no, we've been there, we've done that, we can't really do that until we get the full go-ahead?
Those, I mean, that's a really interesting question. Those are ongoing.
But I guess you end up building a bit of viewer expectation along the way.
I don't think that our 3D audience is big enough or regular enough to have an expectation. They know that we're running a trial. They know that it's about high days and holidays treats rather than, it's not a service of any sort or description. So I don't think that's an issue. There are issues on Sony and the All England Lawn Tennis's, you know, it's as much their decision as it is our decision.
Right. So, but if Sony came to you with a pot of money to top up the licence fee, then you wouldn't be
doesn't really work
turning
like
away.
that.
I was trying to be simplistic. But,
yeah, no, it doesn't work like that. But
there would have to be the will within the BBC as well.
The crucial thing for us during the trial is to experiment creatively with 3D, and things like this, or one or two other things that we've got in the pipeline, are really my focus. Okay.
Well, I have to ask about Doctor Who. New series on Saturday, I'm very excited about that, but more exciting, I guess, for this audience is the 3D special, which I think is being done for the 50th anniversary, which is coming up very soon. What can you tell us about that?
Almost nothing. It's very, very exciting for us. We've got the incredible talents of the Doctor Who team, and they really are, you know, a special group of
Doctor Who
people.
is filmed across in Wales, isn't it? It must be BBC Wales.
Largely, yes. It's a BBC. It comes out of BBC Wales drama, and they've done an incredible job together with Stephen Moffat of, you know, bringing it to a new generation. And the 50th anniversary is a very, very special moment for.
When
the BBC.
do you start filming? Have you got a detail on that, or maybe already underway?
Stuff's already underway, and I'm really not going to tell you anything further about it other than we're really, really excited to have it, and there'll be more information in not that long.
Oh, I'm disappointed. I was hoping we might be able to get a little exclusive on that. John, you've done sports not just in this country, but also overseas. Yep. And I've briefly mentioned it became a sort of viewer expectation. Are you starting to get any of that? I'm thinking particularly, you know, if you're covering landmark sports events, and if it's coming in from overseas, something like the Ryder Cup, ESPN has done a lot of 3D work, but of course the Ryder Cup, as I understand it, wasn't ESPN.
Yeah, so the most recent Ryder Cup, so we've done, since we launched in 2010 with the Ryder Cup that took place at Celtic Manor in Wales, and then we did the most recent one which took place just outside Chicago. The Ryder Cup is a huge event for Sky. Golf is something that lends itself very well to 3D. And the way that the rights work in America is they're split between numerous broadcasters, and ESPN, who are the biggest 3D broadcaster, only have one day of the Ryder Cup. So it became apparent that if it was going to happen, we would have to do it. And so we decided that we would just get on with it, basically. And so we put a team together. We partnered with Cameron Pace, which is James Cameron's 3D production company. And we did all 3 days of coverage. By the end of day one, it was looking like one of the most stupid commissions I think we've ever come up with in terms of we were being absolutely hammered. But by the end, fortunately, Europe kind of staged a great comeback, and it looked like it was all planned.
The audiences generally did very well. I'm sure you won't tell me what the 3D audiences were, but were they, again, on a par or maybe even greater than proportionately with the other audiences which were being experienced?
So I mean, put it this way, in terms of when we have big events, we find that the 3D channel, in terms of homes that have the 3D channel, for those big events, the share that the 3D channel has in those homes is really quite significant in terms of rankings for channels across the base. So we have the Masters coming up very shortly. That will be a big event for us. And certainly as it builds towards a Sunday finish, the audience share in 3D homes will be quite considerable.
And when you decided to do the Ryder Cup, how did you crew it? Did you fly people out from over here, or did you hire locally in the States?
A mixture. So we put the key positions were people that we knew and trusted, because we were working with people we hadn't worked with for the first, haven't worked with previously. So we took people like directors, vision mixers, stereographers, producers.
And presumably people who'd worked on golf.
Yeah, absolutely.
In
it was
the
UK.
UK.
pretty much the team who'd done the first Ryder Cup. And then we supplemented it with local people, and it was great. It was one of those things where it was a pretty full-on project, but the various different teams came together far better than we could ever have hoped, and I think the results spoke for themselves. They looked superb.
Where would you say that is there a country, I'm hoping the answer might be Britain, as to where the pool of talent lies? And I'd like to get both of your views on this. Are us Brits better at doing some elements of 3D, or is it the States can do something else, maybe Australasians?
I think that Britain is in a really, really great space in 3D generally. If you look at what's happening, certainly in the TV space, I mean, you only have to look at what Kim showed to see that is, it's phenomenal. It's pushing the boundaries. It looks absolutely brilliant, and I think that a combination of some of the stuff that BBC's done, a lot of the stuff that Sky's done, is, I think Britain leads the world in terms of the 3D TV space. There is some great work being done in the States, in other international markets, but I think that we can be proud that the skills base that is developing here, and there are some very good independent companies who specialise in either post-production, in cameras, in stereography, whatever, who are right up there. And a lot of their staff are working on big Hollywood films, really kind of pushing the pace. So I think Britain's in a good space.
Kim?
I think it's really the 3D industry, if that's not a misnomer, small though it is really, really crucial to Britain. We have a hard-won reputation in this country for creative excellence, married to technical innovation, whether that's in the video games industry or in the television industry or in the feature film industry. And it's really, really important to the British economy. And I think that if we can continue to grow that, both in 3D and it's other areas of technical innovation, that's a really vital part.
It's kind of in the DNA,
country.
I guess, of British broadcasting.
I think it is.
Anyway. They're just pushing a bit through HD, even say colour, which of course David Attenborough was very much involved in. I guess we'll hear that this afternoon.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can pitch for some questions from everyone here. Might have to ask for the lights to be brought up just a little bit. I think I can see a hand right in the centre here. So I know there's some microphones around somewhere. If not, you might have to shout. There's also a hand down there. So do we have microphones?
There's a chap there with a microphone. Behind there. Okay.
There we go. Can we go? There's a gentleman in the middle there, and there's also a gentleman down there. So whichever's the easiest to get to first. And if you could identify and say who you are before your question, please.
My name is Mary Paul. Working? Yes. From the Stereoscopic Society. I'm not in professional or stereo, but I was wondering if the BBC is going to have, I know you've got the Olympic DVD out. Is there a version in stereo, Blu-ray or stereo type thing for sale?
I actually have no idea.
It's almost a question for the International Olympic Committee, unfortunately, isn't it?
I'm really sorry. I can try and find out for you, but I just don't know off the top of my head. I would have thought yes, but I just don't know the answer to that. Sorry.
I was reprimanded, I think, at least twice during the course of the Olympics for daring to refer to the BBC as the host broadcaster, which you would think it kind of was in a way, but of course...
Is this still active? There was a programme, December, I think, in 3D of the Olympic coverage from the BBC. I'm just wondering, as a licence payer who paid for it all, is there going to be a DVD? A
3D DVD. I don't know. That's something that I guess we would probably worldwide, our commercial arm may well be looking at or have looked at. I guess, you know, the costs of producing it versus the costs of...
I kind of have a feeling with these things, if there was going to be one, they probably would have been in the shops for Christmas.
I'm sure, and if it's not there, I haven't checked, I'm sorry. The footage is actually, of course, owned by OBS and the Olympic Authority, not by the BBC. We were just broadcasting
It's
it.
my host broadcaster problem.
Yeah,
the OBS
exactly.
was the host, not the BBC
So,
in many ways.
You know, I have no idea what the sort of commercial rights situation is on that.
Oh dear, sorry.
Sorry.
Gentleman down there, and there's also a gentleman behind you. You first, sir, please.
Hi, it's Will Watling from Illuminescence. As a 3D wildlife photographer myself, I was very, very impressed, Kim, by that clip, so thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. All my work, you
of
understand.
Course. But
I was in the hide.
But having sat in hides, as you say, you know, for many hours waiting for something to happen, the technical challenges that you obviously had there of incredibly small IOD, I imagine. How did that, was that technology available to you to use, or were you having to push the envelope by literally creating the technology at the same time to do that?
A really good question, and I'm actually going to get Mike to tip in, Mike Gunton here. It's a mixture of both, but there was some cameras that had to be sort of engineered from scratch. Mike, do you want to say more?
I'm actually going to do something that just what you do. I'm going to pass you to Mark, who could tell you even more.
Mark
Mark's here as well.
Because
Mark,
Mike, we
sorry,
go to
I
Mark.
didn't see you there.
I will get it wrong, and Mark will tell me off. So
Brilliant.
I'm going to Mark, and then I can tell him off.
Hello. We went to Canada to film the chipmunks, and with the help of OnSite, we took a freestyle rig with twin epics. We had two zoom lenses, one angle and a tighter lens plus primes. We dug a hole so we get the camera right at the ground level. And the beauty with choosing a subject like the chipmunk is that it will come close to the camera. And as you know, good 3D requires subjects to be close to the camera. And with that in mind, we got what you saw. But that's just the half of it, because we're partnering with Peter Parks, Chris Parks. And the next shoot, where we're off to the Sonoran Desert to film grasshopper mice, we're going to be taking what's called a 3D straight scope. So for the first time, we'll have a tiny front element that will enable us to shoot wide angle right up close to the subject, which should be pretty groundbreaking. Oh, absolutely. No, yes, yeah. We're using we're operating within 3% depth budgets.
I remember, obviously, there was a documentary which perhaps even your team made a few years ago, and the Boulder Cam was created in order to capture some footage without a cameraman being in the way. Is there going to be some sort of making of as well tacked on to the end of this? There is. Fantastic. Right, there was a gentleman up the top there. Sir.
Hello, my name is Galien Chanel-Cassy from 3D production company Cap Production in France. In Paris, we had a bad experience this year of Orange pulling the plug out of the 3D channel. Although they've been extremely supportive for the last 3 years, they did acquire and commissioned a lot of content. But what we witnessed is people had 3D TVs, and sometimes they didn't even know the TV were 3D. They were a client of Orange, and they had the 3D channel in their subscription, but they didn't know they had 3D channel, and that basically what we did witness a lot. So we had the content, we had the feed, but people didn't know that it was available. How do you face this kind of challenge?
I'm happy to talk about that. I mean, I think that it's a very when you have a platform that has many channels on it and many different products, it's very common that customers don't know everything that is there, no matter quite often how many times you tell them. You know, we have lots of different products which have very high awareness, but some groups just still don't use them as much as we would like. And so I think it's a trend that happens across all sorts of different products. Obviously, what you've got to do is to try and keep on communicating to people what is available for them to use, and you just do that as much as your budgets and your marketing allows.
Does that answer the question? I guess it is difficult. There's the test of, would if I wasn't sitting here today, I would still know about Sky 3D because I'm sitting and watching a programme and I will see a trail for it. I'll see promotions on the BBC, very clear announcements before a relevant show, and I'm intrigued as to what it is either about the style of promotions in France or the overall marketing materials that saw the demise. I'm trying to remember, was it Orange? I remember Canal Plus also with them as well. They folded theirs at the start of last year.
I would say, look, I don't want to disrespect what those guys did, but I think they put together a very different offering to what we're trying to do in the UK. I think in terms of the type of events that we cover, the scale of them, the production values, the volume of programming we're putting out it's a very different proposition.
Kim, I'm just wondering actually, as an aside here, this week we saw the launch of BBC Two HD. Now previously when you've done HD broadcast, the old BBC HD channel would take the 3D and BBC One would do the regular broadcast. So you're going to continue that practice going forward?
Obviously, we don't have a 3D service. That's absolutely right. So what we've done throughout the course of the trial is experiment with different ways of getting our content out there, using our HD capacity, but also using iPlayer, and we'll continue to do that for the duration of the trial. What happens beyond the trial is a completely different, we'll be in a different space then.
Time for one, maybe two more questions, if there is one. There's a gentleman in the centre there. There's also somebody, this gentleman here, because that's easy to get to. And then I don't think there's a second microphone can find its way to the gentleman in the centre there.
I knew that when I chose my seat. Yes, Chris Carey from Medusa Systems. John said earlier on, which I really agree with, that it's critically important to the development and the growth of the market to expand the genres of television that are actually experimenting with TV, and I just wanted with 3D. I just wanted to ask if, within the Sky framework, is there now a broader base of commissioning potential across different genres, and in the same way in 2D, that there are programs which are produced that are sponsored programs as opposed to being commissioned, because it's unreasonable for us to expect Sky to put their hand in the pocket every time. Is there a structure that would allow the independent sector now to access broadcast capability in a more simplified way?
Sure. So I think if there are two elements, one about breadth of genres and one about sponsored programming, I think, to your question. So in terms of breadth of genres, we have tried a variety of different genres. What we know is that sport, movies and natural history are the three things that viewers say they most want to watch and do watch, because quite often claim viewing and actual viewing is different. We have played around with arts programming, with scripted programming, and we will probably do more in both of those spaces. But ultimately, it's about priorities and about budgets and about the pace at which we can move. So we do want to try and offer as good and as broad a service as possible. When it comes to sponsored programming, we, as a commercial broadcaster, are absolutely open to discussing those sorts of things, subject to the editorial proposition and also those things fitting within Ofcom regulations. So we were happy to have those conversations.
Good, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you very much. And there was the gentleman in the centre there, so if we can get the microphone to you. I think there's one at the back too, which we can get to. If we've got time, we've got time for one more? Okay, good. So.
Yeah, it was actually hello, yes. Ian Kelso, Chilworth Media, independent production company. It was a question for John, which you've sort of slightly answered anyway. My query was going to be simply, with the rejig of Sky's 3D offerings, would there be any more arts commissioning going on?
It's a good question, and to be honest, I don't know at this point whether that is going to trigger a change. Increasingly, what we do is we work very closely with what I would call the core 2D channels at Sky, so in this case, Sky Arts. And what we'd look to do is to make sure that the project, first of all, has a home on Sky Arts, and then if it looks like it could benefit from 3D, that the storytelling could be enhanced, that the whole kind of viewer experience could be enhanced, then we look at those things and try and find a way to make them happen. But having sort of run Sky Arts for a long time, it's an area that's close to my heart, but also really my job is about making sure our viewers get the the programming that they most want.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Right, there was one. Where was the final
Right
question? Up towards the. Was it at the back? Was it a gentleman there? No, too many questions.
Hello. Hi. Jason Robinson from Stereoscape. My background in 3D has been theme parks for the last, since the early 90s. And I always get asked that I've been to see a movie and nothing came out of the screen. And I spend a while explaining to people about depth budgets and, you know, you can't experience this thing for very, very long. And people look at me and think, you know, I'm too much of a geek for my own heart. Do you think as an industry we have to have a look at our marketing of 3D and maybe try and bridge the gap between the images that you see of people buying TVs with things popping out on a advertisement brochure, etc., and the actual reality of what people are going to see at home?
Tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You know, there's no doubt that 3D, you know, it has to promise something spectacular. That's part of its sort of, you know, its draw. Some of the most creatively exciting 3D I've seen personally is some test filming that we did of jewels in extreme close-up, and it was absolutely gobsmackingly mesmerising. And then some documentary test filming we did of just of people's faces and talking about very sort of emotional sort of subject
I guess
matter.
then how do you communicate that as against the, you know, the flying bits in space problem?
Absolutely. I think it is a real challenge because I think some of the sort of biggest creative opportunities may not be, you know, the ones that sit with that marketing message. So I think it's a very, very good question.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely one of the biggest challenges we face is how do we sell the proposition of 3D? Because if you think about how you would traditionally market new products, you could put an ad in half-time of X Factor, but the trouble is you won't see it in 3D. You could put an ad on the back page of The Sun or something, but it wouldn't be 3D. You know, it's seeing is believing. You have to get people to actually see 3D for themselves, and that's one of the reasons why we launched into pubs and clubs before we took our channel. Why? Because we knew we could reach a large number of people. We have worked hard to get 3D into places of kind of high footfall, so whether it's train stations or shopping centres or music festivals, just so you can really get people to put on a pair of glasses and look and take a view, because we find that from our research is a lot of their cynicism or apathy goes when they look at it, and actually there's a sort of wow moment.
I think there is one other thing, which is that we've got to get better, or we don't have to, but people who are interested in 3D have got to get closer to selling the things that we make on their stories and on their inherent content, rather than just on those whiz-bang moments. And that's one of the things I'm most interested in personally.
Very quickly, with gentleman in the third row there.
Patrick James from Sky. My question's to Kim. Just curious, you're under a experimental stage with 3D trial period. So what do you suspect will happen come the end of this trial?
I don't know. We'll take stock in this summer. There'll be one sort of period of pulling together the research and information that we've collected throughout the trial. And then there'll be a second phase where we take stock in January of 14. So I think it's really...
consultation needed with the BBC Trust at any point? Or?
Of course, the trial has to be approved by the Trust, and they'll want to, you know, they'll want to see the outcome of it. So I think you're really looking at spring 14 for the answer to your question.
Right, we better wrap. Kim, John, thank you very much indeed, and thank you to you as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.